Welcome back. Well, let's get more now on that investigation by Durham police into Sir Keir Starmer over claims that he broke COVID restrictions by having beers and a takeaway with party staff in April last year. Well, the Labour Party has insisted he did nothing wrong, but a memo leaked to the Mail on Sunday suggests that the dinner was on Mr Starmer's daily schedule. Well, joining us now is the human rights barrister Adam Wagner. Grateful for your time on Sky News this morning. Now, based on what we know so far, do you believe that Sir Keir Starmer broke the COVID restrictions that were in place at the time?
I don't think so. I haven't thought so since this was first revealed. I think now seeing that this was a scheduled event as part of the Leader of the Opposition's visit to Durham during the local election campaign, and this was obviously an event focused on him being with the local MP and their staff, and it was in the evening. There was food ordered because it was in the evening, which is what they've always said. I don't really see how it could be a breach of the regulations. The regulations allowed any gathering that was reasonably necessary for work or voluntary activity, and obviously that the purpose of that visit overall was for the Leader of the Opposition to visit the local campaigners, the local MP. That's all on the schedule. So the police would have to say, well, actually, we disagree with the Labour Party's analysis of what was reasonably necessary for the leader's trip to Durham. And I'm doubtful that they could really go behind that, given there was quite an obvious work purpose.
And you mentioned there that this was a scheduled event, and is that area that the Mail on Sunday is hanging on to, because today it has obtained a memo, which says a leaked memo, which suggests that the dinner was planned. So what impact then will that have on the investigation?
Yeah, I just think people are getting a bit mixed up because the Downing Street gatherings, a lot of what the issue with the Downing Street gathering is they were pre-arranged social events. So the purpose of them was social. The only ones that are being investigated, you remember that there's more than the ones that are being investigated. The only ones that are being investigated are the ones where it's quite obvious that the purpose of the event was social, either a Christmas party, a leaving party, a birthday party. Whereas the fact that this is pre-planned, I think, shows the opposite. It shows that it was part of the Leader of the Opposition's plan when he went to Durham. It was planned for him. He's meeting the local MP. So, and the fact that there was food there, they would have to, I mean, are they going to look at the Prime Minister's schedule and say, well, every time he ate during his own trip to various constituencies during last year's local elections, every time he ate, probably during the day, I don't know whether he does evening meetings, but every time he was doing that, is that going to be not reasonably necessary if the government thought it was as part of the plan? So I can understand where this is all coming from politically, but I don't think legally, I still haven't seen anything which I think would be in breach of the regulations.
Just help us to understand, and just to get a clearer picture, what are the differences between the parties held in number 10 and the curry and beers? Because Dominic Raab, when we spoke to him this morning on Sophie Ridge on Sunday, he did tell Sophie that it was hypocrisy for Sir Keir Starmer to complain about the former and then defend the latter. Yeah,
I mean, whether it's hypocrisy or not is a political question, but the difference legally is that the events in Downing Street were obviously social events. The leaving party, birthday parties, Christmas parties. That's the 12 gatherings all fell within those categories, and so the word party is the clue. And I don't think you could say this was a party just because there's a bottle of beer. It's on his schedule. He's going to meet his local MP. Now, what was discussed and what the purpose was, will come down to the facts that they'll have to get that from the Labour Party. And I don't know. Maybe it'll turn out there's an email saying, look, let's all have a mees up in the evening, let off some steam, and in which case, fair enough, that's something different. But it doesn't seem to me that this is the same category. In the same way, look, there was, you mentioned Dominic Raab, there was an event outside where, you remember the one that kicked everything off? There was a picture of Downing Street staff, the Prime Minister, his wife, eating cheese and drinking wine outside. And Dominic Raab said, well, that was at the end of the day. I think it was after the work had concluded, but it was said essentially that they were discussing work, and that event wasn't investigated by the Metropolitan Police, and I think rightly so. The Bring Your Own Booze event was different because the purpose of that event was, it seems, not a work event, but a social event between colleagues. And I just look, people may be watching and thinking, oh, these are all very narrow distinctions, but I think in the context of the leader of the opposition arranging a trip to a local constituency just before the local election, that's the schedule that they decided on. They had social distancing requirements it's on the schedule. I'm not entirely sure how the police can say, well, actually, we disagree. That wasn't reasonably necessary. You could have sat in your hotel room rather than going and meeting the local MP and the team. You could have sat in your hotel room and ate there. I don't see how the police know better than the Labour Party what was reasonably necessary for the leader's trip.
And just very quickly then, all eyes obviously now on Durham Police. So what are the areas that they'll be looking at in order to draw up those distinctions and make those distinctions that you've spelled out to us?
Well, I think the first question actually is whether Durham Police have a policy of no retrospective enforcement, because they said back in 2020 in relation to Dominic Cummings, remember that was at Durham Police as well, they said generally we don't retrospectively enforce the regulations, and that's actually why they didn't investigate him. So I think the first question for them is, well, what is their policy and are they applying it consistently? Because I wouldn't want it to be the case, and in fact I think it would be unlawful if the reason they're investigating here is because they're under a lot of pressure from the newspapers and politically. But the second question for them, if they are going to investigate it, is to delve into the issues that I've just discussed. They'll be looking at that schedule, and I think that will be an important piece of evidence that this wasn't an impromptu social gathering. It was part of the schedule. Next, they'll be asking, well, why did you decide that was reasonably necessary? The Labour Party, if they stick to the same account they've been giving all along, which is that we needed to feed our staff, and that was a convenient time to do it. And at the same time, we were meeting the local MP, which is what they did. Then I personally don't see how they can take it forward.
Adam Wagner, who's a human rights barrister, grateful for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.